Everybody, welcome to Pollstar Live Digital Sessions. We have a special guest with us today. She is our Impact 50 cover subject, Dayna Frank. Welcome, Dayna.
Thanks for having me.
We're so glad to have you here. Just as a way of introduction, Dayna is the owner and CEO of First Avenue Productions, which has 7 venues. They put on 1,250 shows a year, 486 employees. First Avenue was 5th on Pollstar's 2019 top 200 clubs, selling 181,000 tickets. In addition,
in the main room.
In the main room. They are working on trying to put together a proposal for or plan for a 7,000 to 10,000 amphitheater at the Upper Harbor Terminal. Also, First Avenue celebrated 50 years this year. And in addition, she is the president of NIVA, the National Independent Venues Association, which is kind of in a critical period right now as Congress is coming together. You've got a lot on your plate, my friend. Which is putting it mildly. First thing I want to just ask you is, so for this cover story in Pollstar, we put the title "Leadership Forged in a Time of Crisis," and I think you really personify this. I have to be honest, I didn't necessarily know who you were, and your club, of course, until all this came about, and you have just risen up and really shown some great leadership especially with NIVA, but also with your club and everything else, and how it's grown over the time you've been running it. Can you talk about some of your, what do you think makes a great leader, and some of your qualities that have give you this leadership qualities that have given you this kind of ability?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for saying that. I'm glad this is being recorded, so I can just go back and watch that intro over and over again. That's awesome. No, I think leadership, my qualities of leadership, I hope are very collaborative and very big picture, and try to, solve problems, right? And so that's a lot of where some of the genesis of NIVA, where NIVA kind of originated, is just seeing this problem and this long lasting problem and just thinking okay, what can we do about it? And, hopefully leading with values and staying consistent and staying fair and equitable. Another really important thing to me in NIVA is, treating, watching out for all the members, big, small, urban, rural, coastal, Midwest, etc. And just, trying to forge a path for, the sustainability and survival of the industry as a whole.
But how about First Avenue Productions' exponential growth? When you started, I think 2009, it was just First Avenue. And how many employees were there then?
Oh, 100-ish, maybe. First Avenue in the main room. And then we opened the Depot, the restaurant, in 2010. And that was the first expansion. And we're oh, this is fun. And then we started doing, Nate and Sonia and the booking team, just, we're doing so many bookings outside of our own rooms that it made sense to try to acquire or kind of expand into other venue sizes, and so our mission has always been to service the bands and to take care of artists, from their first stop into town all the way up through to the arenas. And so the way we thought we could do that best was by having the venues and being able to make capital improvements and to be able to make sure the experience for bands and fans were as best as humanly possible. When you don't have the rooms, you're not in control of that. So that's kind of what we have prided ourselves on, is getting rooms and making them better, making the experience better.
But to have that kind of exponential growth as an independent, which we already know is one of the hardest jobs out there, being an independent venue, and you can probably speak to that in terms of NIVA, but just for yourself and your market, how have you been able to have such incredible success at a time when, we did a cover with Seth Hurwitz from IMP, and it was a big flag outside of a museum, and it said endangered species, and we had a picture of Seth as an independent promoter. So not only are you an anomaly in that it's a difficult job to have, but you've grown. How is that even possible in today's venue market?
I mean, I think that we do everything like as ethically and honorably and the very best we can. You know, I think a lot of times the term, you know, the local guys is viewed in our industry as like a pejorative, like, you know, oh, you've only got one club or you're only in one market. And it's like, we take a lot of pride in that, you know, being like a company that's designed and built and structured entirely to support the community of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so, you know, our goal as a company has always been to service our local community as best we possibly can. And so I think a lot of the opportunities and the growth came to us. I mean, almost all of them. You know, people always want to talk about the big strategy and how you mastermind or how I masterminded all this. And literally it was, you know, opportunities that came, I believe, by doing things the right way and by being good at your job and people wanting to partner with you. And so we've been very fortunate to have these amazing opportunities and to be able to have a company that is, you know, financially secure and really well managed. And, you know, everyone at First Avenue, I think, is the best in the country at what they do. And so we're structured in a way that we're able to take on these opportunities as they came to us and grow with every new output.
But was there any sort of grand plan, like we're going to
Nope.
expand, we're going to get 486 employees, 7 venues, we're going to do a partnership with Jam Productions, we're going to, you know, go to St. Paul. Like, how did it just unfold like that? And were there any like failures in that too, or what were the challenges while you were growing like that? Did you try any other venues that didn't work?
Lots of failures. Oh my God, no. I mean, a million failures, right? But I think the grand plan, like I said, was just to service our community and to service the bands and to be, you know, to make bands want to come to Minneapolis, to make them have a great time, either production wise or experience wise, crowd wise when they're here, to make them want to come back, so that people in Minneapolis, you know, we're not a New York, LA, or Nashville. Like, we have to make ourselves attractive. So that was the plan. And so when there was a size room that we saw like, oh, we're missing out on helping that artist because we don't have that, then we would start to think about how we could bring that into the fold. But again, there was no great, you know, grand plan besides doing the very best we can every opportunity that we can do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wish I could tell you about some secret meeting that happened and like a hair that I cut and sold to the devil, or I don't know, but nothing exciting like that.
No, it's just really impressive. And you know, the rooms you have, they vary, right? You have a tiny one that's, it's 250 for the 7th Street entry room, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes up to the Palace Theater, which is 2,800, and that's the partnership with Jam.
Yep.
How does that work with your partnership with Jam Productions?
It's a 50-50. It's been a really great experience. And so, like I said, I think our company is collaborative by nature. And so the Minneapolis market has always been exceptionally collaborative between the independent promoters here. You know, we partner with Rose, we partner with Jam, we work with Sue McLean. You know, it's a tight, close-knit community. We obviously compete, but it's, you know, very friendly. And so we do the shows at Surly Brewery, up to 6,000 capacity outdoors in the summer. We do those with Jam, we do the Caboose with Rose. So like I said, anywhere that we think we can put on a concert and have a great time, we'll do it.
Yeah. And then talk a bit about this amphitheater, the Upper Harbor Terminal, that I know you put a proposal in, and it's still, it's in political limbo, I think is what I called it if I can quote myself.
Yeah.
But the state legislature is still voting on it. But that seems incredibly ambitious and exciting.
Yeah, so that's been, Minneapolis, St. Paul is the only metro region without an amphitheater. We don't have a permanent outdoor music space in the summer, which I think a lot of people seeing the winter think like, oh, well, obviously, but like in the summer, everyone wants to be outside. And so to not have a space like this is just a shame. So we started doing outdoor shows. You know, our first at Paul's Island, we did about 10,000 people for the Alabama Shakes, which was just like a magical experience. And so we were directed towards an RFP that was gonna become available at Upper Harbor Terminal, which it's right on the Mississippi River. It's 2 miles north of downtown. It's got like sunset views of the skyline. It's between a freeway and a river, so the immediate residential impact is pretty non-existent. The other side of the river is a power plant buffer zone. So it's just this really amazing setting, and it's a total of 48 acres that we're developing with a local developer to do an amphitheater, affordable housing, industrial, senior housing, community services, etc. So yeah, and we're actually expecting the state legislator to vote on a bonding bill like today or tomorrow. Like,
oh wow,
like everything else happening in the world, like that seems to be like all of that today. So we'll see. I mean, it's in a neighborhood called North Minneapolis, which is historically marginalized, disinvested, disenfranchised community with just a lot of needs and but a lot of hope and a really unbelievable community. So, we devised the amphitheater to not just be a place to go hear music, but to also be an economic generator and an employer of the neighborhood, a year-round facility, a career pathways program, entrepreneurship opportunities, to really be like to jumpstart the economic investment and generational wealth creation for the neighborhood. So I'm really proud of the program. I hope it moves forward, and we'll find out soon.
Yeah. Well, so you've got this empire that you've built, 486 employees. A pandemic hits right on time, unfortunately. Our business shuts down. Really just unbelievable times. And suddenly you pivot because you didn't have enough to do, basically. So can you talk a bit about how you got to NEVA and the development of that, and how here we are, the board president of NEVA. And today's a critical day, and I hope people who are watching this will take note of that. And we'll talk more about what people can do, but first let's talk about its genesis and how you got involved.
Yeah, I mean, it really, like, the genesis was Moose at Marauder and IVW, and they started having town halls, like, probably March 10th, 11th, like the week before.
Wait, let's back up a bit. So IVW is Independent Venue Week, right?
Yeah.
Are you a part of that?
Yeah, we've been a part, I think, since the first year. It's the coolest thing, like a week to celebrate independent venues and music and community. I like couldn't be more supportive and proud of what they built. It was a British initiative that Marauder brought over to the U.S.
And it's only a couple years in the U.S., right?
I should know.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
So was there a meeting about Independent Venue Week, and that was what led to NEVA, or was it just like, let's all get together and discuss the current situation, or what was that first call about?
It was Independent Venue Week sending out an email saying, hey, does everybody want to get on the phone and talk about what's going on? And, we were in our conference room at First Ave. We were still working. It was, the time when we kind of thought like maybe elbow bumping instead of shaking hands would like solve all of this. And so we were in the conference room on like a call, just like soaking in all the information, because probably remember like first Seattle shut down and then DC, and then it became pretty clear that everyone was going to be shut down. But we still didn't know, like, was it going to be a week, 2 weeks? It was just like you were consuming information as soon as it came out to try to like make some sense of what was going on.
Yeah, I love about it. It wasn't a Zoom call either, was it? Like Zoom wasn't really a thing yet.
No,
Way back in like early March or whenever it was.
It was before like everyone knew how to do their backgrounds and like turn the camera off, when you were still like watching people go to the bathroom, So.
You really quick, this is a good, what's your background over there with the Ramones and Grandmaster Flash and Peaches?
This is the 7th Street. No, it's the First Avenue side of the First Avenue building in downtown Minneapolis.
That's so
cool.
It's
at First Avenue and 7th Street.
And so those are all bands who've played First Avenue.
Yeah, over the last 50 years.
50 years. So you have this call, and Moose is on that. Do you remember who else is on that call?
Cecilia from Marauder, and I can't remember who the speakers were, to be honest, or how it was structured. I think everybody kind of jumped in um, and asked questions and just kind of talked about what they were seeing and what they were hearing and how they were adapting. And
so then it progressed from there, right? Like I think Moose wanted to have a sort of a volunteer committee, some sort of ad hoc committee to get people more involved, right? Was that the next step?
yeah, so I sent an email saying who wants to be more involved, and there was a steering committee or a group of, I think, maybe 20 to 30 folks that jumped on that. At that point it was Zoom, and so jumped on a Zoom, and from there there were nominations and elections, and a board was determined, like an executive board,
Right.
and then filing paperwork and kind of moving forward in a more like organizational manner.
Can you talk about some of the people who are now on the board and on the various committees helping out, and from which venues and where they are? And part of what I love about this is just how geographically diverse it is and the level of clubs where these people are at. So it's not just, you know, people in New York and LA necessarily, but it's all over the country. It's really an interesting group of people you've assembled.
No, it's like unbelievable. I mean, I think Civil, I want to give all the credit to Civil in Chicago and Katie Tutton, and they were already organized, and so a lot of the first structuring, you know, was kind of done based on their modeling and their the groundwork that they had laid. And so Katie Tutton and Chris Bauman, Billy Camp and Joe Shanahan from Civil in Chicago, and then Justin Cantor from Le Poisson Rouge is the vice president. He is in charge of the resources, which is like the data collection and structuring and kind
And
of
he's a cello player, right?
And he's an amazing cello player. Absolutely.
Most importantly.
Yes. And he's got a great company called Venue Pilot, and just really all around amazing. And like, I didn't know any of these people before 3 months ago. And then Stephen Chilton from the Rebel Lounge in Phoenix is in charge of membership. And Steve Sternshine from Empire Represents in Austin is finance fundraising. And Hal Reel from the World Cafe Live in Philly is governance and corporate structuring. And then Moose is the executive director.
All right, good. And
then under them, wait, I can keep going.
Right, keep going. We should hear them all because it's important.
I want to all. It's unbelievable how many people are committed and dedicated and just working tirelessly. Laura Wilson from the Bohemian Foundation in Fort Collins, Colorado, heads up the reopening guidelines. So she did the amazing guidelines handbook, and then, you know, is working on everything related to reopening. And then Patrick Wilson is in charge of artist relations and just that amazing artist letter and the support behind NEVA and what we're doing. And then obviously we have to mention Audrey, who just amazing in all counts, and heading up communications in the press and structuring and everything. I can keep going. Adam Harkey from Wave and Cotillion is the chair of the advocacy committee, and just
out of Kansas, right?
Out of Kansas.
Yeah, I love that it's the heartland. There's just the also Gary Witt out of the Pabst Theater Group in Milwaukee. I mean, it's really
one of the favorite new people that I've met, along like with Adam, is Toby Parks from Des Moines, Iowa. Like, it's really the coolest club that, you know, I didn't know before all this, and I'm like, I can't wait to get to Des Moines. Like, that's what this shit has done to me, right? No, I'm from Minnesota. I have to make fun of Iowa and Wisconsin.
Well, it's just so cool that it's so geographically diverse and democratic and all across the country, and how the clubs just really, like, these represent the American people. Like, this is America. Like, all of these clubs, 2,000 of them, like, really putting their heart and soul into this. And NEVA's done such a great job and of really getting the message out there. I think you got 1 million signatures. You got 600 artists like, you know, Lady Gaga and Neil Young, and everybody signing on. You hired a big time lobbyist firm, Aikman Gump, who have been in the news for lots of different reasons. But, you know,
yeah,
you guys
we had an did a lobbying committee or like a selection committee, I guess, in traditional words. And it was Chris Cobb from Nashville and Katie Tutton from Civil and Gary and Audrey and Bruce and myself. And we interviewed a few different firms. And, it seemed kind of antithetical to go with the biggest, baddest firm. But, for us, like, we have to win this. This isn't like an exercise, and we don't like have lobbyists on retainer just in case or whatever. Like this is life and death for 90% of NEVA members, and so we just thought like we have to give this our best shot.
I spoke to Jamie Loeb, a Nederlander, for something else a couple of days ago, and she told me about these videos they've made to send to Congress. And she said they'll make you cry. Like they're like these beautiful things. Like she's made 2 of them, and you're taking she's like VP of marketing at Nederlander, and she's doing these like great videos that are lobbying Congress. And what I think is so extraordinary is you couldn't get a more efficient, amazing group of people than venue people, because they're entrepreneurs. They're every day they put on a show. There's a P&L they have to go through for each show. Each day they're like a new business. And you call them type A people, which I thought was hilarious, but true. Like, what is it about venue and venue owners that makes them so incredibly efficient and this core of expediency to get things done? Like they get shit done. Venue people get shit done like nobody else in the world. Like, what is that?
Because you have to open your doors. We don't live in these like theoretical, like hypothetical worlds. And like, I really respect my tech friends and I love them. And I have all like I said, all the respect for like the companies that they're building. But like, it's very different when you have to like, you're in charge of 2,000 people's lives, for instance. And like you have to put on the show and you have to make sure the beer is stocked and you have to make sure like there are lots of things like I's to dot and T's to cross before you can operate. And so I think we're just used to like acting really fast, putting out fires, like getting shit done immediately. And, and also then moving on to the next show the next night. So it's like, okay, at least I've seen it in like the advocacy committee, like, okay, this legislator, that one, this one, we're used to like multitasking and following up and following through. It's, it's like weirdly similar to being a promoter.
Well, it's interesting looking at Pollstar's Impact 50 this year too. Like there's a lot of people you wouldn't ordinarily see on the list. And they come from all different stratas of the business. And there's like a moving company who pivoted over to start making face masks. And there's another person who's a production person who's been in all over philanthropy. And it's just, I feel like you could take the people in this business and you could apply them to like solving world peace or a mission to Mars, and they could do it. There's something about people in venues, like they're not effing around. They are so leaning in, their faces hurt. And so they get it done. And so NEVA has been like the like kind of personification of that ethos. And it is amazing to see.
One of like my other, one of my favorite new people, Steven Severin from Numos in Seattle, I think in the Billboard article was like, what are we going to do? Just like sit back and give up? No, we're used to working. Like we're used to working time. And now like, instead of working on putting on a show, we're going to work on saving our business. And then, as long as we're going to work on saving our business, let's work on saving everybody's business. Right. So that's what people did. And they just jumped in and got straight to work. Again, it's been like really, really amazing. And I think no one thinks that something like this will ever happen again. Right. So we know it's a pretty singular, like, moment in time and experience, but it's been really amazing to work with people and to see everybody just pitch in for the greater good.
Like, let's put on a show again and again and again.
Yeah.
So this is a pivotal time within a pivotal time within a pivotal time. Congress just is meeting today to go over the budgeting, and I copied down some headlines. Congress set for showdown on coronavirus relief legislation. Congress is back, but the leaders are still far apart. A fight over the next round of coronavirus aid is coming to head as lawmakers prepare to race the clock. Like you are wading into like the epicenter of the epicenter of the epicenter. Like this is where the whole country is focused right now. And it is a lot of like make or break time for people. Can you talk a bit about where you guys are at and what can be done? Like, what about the people watching who want to save our beloved venues? What the hell can we do, Dayna? Tell
Yeah,
us.
I feel like my heart's been racing a million miles an hour since March, but like, man, you just got it going even more. So I think the whole country, at least the impacted, businesses and people are like waiting for Mitch McConnell to reveal his bill, which I guess is coming today or tomorrow, because we saw what was in the Democrats' bill, the HEROES Act in the House, and now we're waiting to see what McConnell has in his bill, and then I think the negotiating kind of starts to begin between Democrats and Republicans, and so it all kind of has come into a head. Yeah, this is the week legislators traditionally go home for August recess, August 4th, or August 10th. So the theory is that something will get done before then because people want to go home and campaign. So that's why all the emails, every email that is sent to Congress is just like of pivotal importance. All the phone calls, all the reaching out, all the telling of personal stories, how this has impacted you. You just never know where you tell that story, which, even in we had one legislator read a story in the local press. I think it was the Johnson City Press in Tennessee, like rural Tennessee, who read the article, reached out, got involved, and then went to city council and made some significant action based on an article in the local press. So like, you just never know what's going to be important. So, again, just like keeping up the drumbeat, if there's agents or promoters or venues, artists, just making sure that everyone knows, like, this really is like, this is make or break, do or die, every platitude you can think of, like, this is the time.
I mean, there were some stats I'd seen. They may have been a little bit extreme, but I thought I saw like 90% of businesses will go belly up, of venue businesses specifically. Independent venues will go belly up in the next 6 months if they don't get, is it 6 months? Is it less? I mean, we're already at 4 months here. Like, I just like Spaceland here just went under in Los Angeles. The First Avenue Lounge in DC went under. Are you hearing about more and more venues actually going under at this point?
So what we're hearing is that NEVA is actually bringing people a lot of hope, because we have 2,100 or so members at this point, but almost, I would say, half to 2/3 are like actively engaged, opening the daily newsletters, on the town halls, in committees. And so what our precinct captains are saying is that people are calling saying, how likely is this? Because I don't know whether to close up or keep going. And so we're able to really help people, at least like bring some hope that some meaningful change might happen. So the survey that we took was early May. And so it was 6 months from then. And so we always thought that August and maybe September was the cliff. And as we get closer to like people having to pay August rent and pay their bills, we get more and more phone calls, asking the likelihood, or just more deeply distressed. And so we are, and I'm stumbling because it's like just so heartbreaking, like what a steep cliff we're up against if we don't get aid. It's just going to be cataclysmic.
I mean, the one that I think took everybody, kind of kicked the wind out of you, was the Troubadour. Put up a GoFundMe page. Like, the Troubadour is a shrine. These are temples. These are iconic, like First Avenue. Like, and that happened fairly early. That was like April, maybe.
There's been a couple key turning points in the NEVA, the history of NEVA. One was when Christine at the Troubadour, it was right after, I think, Gavin Newsom came out and said that, what we all know now, which is like, we're not going to open until there's a vaccine. That's a pretty, I think, accepted, maybe, limited capacity. It barely works for restaurants. It certainly doesn't work if you have to sell tickets. And so that was when people were started, the governors were first starting to come out. And then, I mean, it's an impossible situation, whether you're the Troubadour or whether you're like just whether you're a venue with even $1 million endowment or whatever. Like, what business can go 18 months without revenue? with all of the bills and absolutely no support, no access to capital. You know, if you're for profit, you can't fundraise. There's no ancillary companies. There's, you know, no stock investment. There's just, again, that was the kind of the motivation behind the federal campaign. It's like, if there's anywhere else we could go, we'd be doing it. But there's no other resource for us.
You know, when we spoke, I was, you know, and the way you so naturally speak about the business and the industry and the state of it, and what it's like to be a venue owner. Like, this is from a very real place, obviously. But you've been calling senators and Congress people, right? And you actually have had conversations with some of the politicians. What are those conversations like? And like, are they receptive? Are they listening? Are they just blowing you off? Or is there any kind of like exchange?
No, I mean, it's a lot like this. I mean, I am who I am. Like, what you see is what you get. And like, the talking points are the same. You know, it's like making people really understand that, like, there is a cliff, that this isn't, you know, this isn't like politics, or this isn't like posturing, or there's, you know, there's no way to hide it, that like we're on the verge of collapse, you know. And so I think, you know, talking to my local politicians in Minneapolis, like, it's great because everybody loves First Avenue. And then when you can explain to them, like, there's a First Avenue in every town, whether it's Kane's Ballroom in Tulsa, or the Troubadour, or the Independent in San Francisco, or Numos, or, you know, Revolution Hall in Portland. Like, there's just, every city has this like beloved institution that make people want to live there and make them proud to be a resident, and kind of give the city the flavor of what it is. And so it has been really easy conversations. You know, the tougher parts have been explained in the industry, because I didn't know, but I guess it's a little obtuse to a lot of people. But you know, when you just explain like the numbers and what we're up against, people get it really quickly. Like, oh, hey, we prepaid all of our expenses in December. We prepaid our insurance, staff bonuses, rent. I mean, all of our expenses we paid on the assumption of having a 2020, and the very like legitimate assumption that we were going to have shows throughout 2020. And so when you explain that this happened at the point where like our cash was already depressed, and then you take away all avenues of getting revenue, then it makes, you know, again, our conversations have gone from like varying degrees of like, yes, I support you, to like, yes, I want to champion you. We haven't really talked to anyone who's like, I don't care. So it's, you know,
good.
luckily.
So they have hearts. The people in Capitol Hill. Go ahead.
Music is universal too. Like, I mean, even like, you know, from the most progressive to the deepest red, like, everyone goes to see music and understands what we bring, not just in terms of like cultural and emotional experience, but also to our local economies. You know, that especially the economic impact of small clubs is greater even than like the arenas, because, you know, the ticket price, if your ticket sales are like $5 or $10, well, you're at least doubling, tripling, you know, 10 times that just by like going out to dinner, paying for parking, paying for an Uber. And so just again, the conversations have been pretty easy. So we're fortunate for that. You know, getting action is a lot harder, but at least it feels like we're being supported and understood.
I mean, you know, since this whole thing started with the pandemic, people have been fixated on the live business, like almost to an obsession. And being at Pollstar, we feel it acutely. We get calls from, it hasn't stopped. Like, when is it coming back? When are we going to do? Like it's actually incredibly gratifying to see how important live music and venues are to people. Like, that's all anybody wants. I mean, you know, their family and friends, sure, but venues and music, that's everything. Like, it is like, it must be gratifying to be at the crux of that, right? Like, you suddenly, and it's like, even, you know, you have First Avenue, okay, iconic, Prince, replacements, we love it. But Neva, oh my God, you're taking the whole world with venues. Like, that's what people really like. It's. I mean, even just, you know, the cover of our magazine, like, it's gotten to a level now where it's a national, if not international obsession. When Mike Brown had that comeback show in Fort Fort Smith, Arkansas, with Travis McCready. There was press there from like Japan and Ireland filming it. Like everybody's really fixated on it. And do you think that's going to hopefully translate over to Capitol Hill?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there are people that like, even I know friends in Minneapolis that like I couldn't have been able to drag to a show a year ago now who are like, oh my God, when are you opening up? I just am dying to go to a concert. And it like live music is universal. And, you know, it's not like this crisis exposed like a fault in our business model or like a economic problem in our industry. It's literally, there is a virus that can only be cured by social distancing, and we have small intimate spaces. So like I feel really strongly that when there's a vaccine and life begins to return to normal, that we're going to go into a golden era, especially in club venues, as you know, people are just dying for connections and for these intimate experiences. So I feel really strongly that nothing is going to come along like live streams or Netflix or, you know, nothing's going to come to, you know, abate people's interest in going to see music. If nothing else, it's only getting stronger. And I think the live stream will be like an additive addition, is a way to maybe artists to generate more revenue. And I'm pretty excited about that opportunity.
Is that anything you've been doing at your venues with live streaming or filming any of your shows, or is there any sort of aspect of that that you have been putting out there?
Yeah, we're working with some local like at-home festivals, helping promote and getting involved and sharing, you know, our social resources as best we can. We haven't done any streaming from the venue. We don't have the infrastructure or the production. So it felt like, you know, when you are in a cash crunch and, you know, looking at, again, 18 months to a year, no revenue, like we thought it was more important to pay our employees and to make sure that First Avenue could pay their bills and get through this than to experiment with some live streaming. So that's the decision we made. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to do some of it in the future, and we'll, you know, again, we'll see what happens as the year progresses.
All right, good. We got questions coming in. Keep them coming. I'm going to get to them, but I want to ask you one more question, and then we'll get to this whole roll of questions. But keep them coming, guys. 50 years of First Avenue, and it should be said, you basically, well, first talk about your first time going to the club.
My first time, I had a very cool older sister who worked at a skateboard shop in Calhoun, what was called Calhoun Square, who loved the Pixies. And so my parents were out of town and we had a babysitter, and she managed to convince the babysitter to take us to the Pixies in 1990, I think I was 10. And so that was my first time. And like,
great show, great band.
It was great. And then I, you know, went to like all of the alt rock in the early 90s and basically like spent my entire youth at First Avenue.
Well, people don't know, like, you're a club baby. Like, you were born into a club, basically. Can you talk a bit about your family background and how you kind of learned about clubs? And yeah, and and that this comes in light that it's its 50th anniversary. So we're not just talking about the history for nothing, but you're the personification of in a way of like First Avenue and its history, right?
A little bit, yeah. So my dad was best friends with a guy named Alan Fingerhut, who started First Avenue in 1970. He was heir to the Fingerhut family, the Fingerhut catalog, and so he inherited, I think, $5 million in 1970 and converted the old abandoned Greyhound bus station into a rock club called the Depot. And it went through a variety of management shifts, from a company called Uncle Sam's Danceteria that I think was out of Kansas City or St. Louis. And so it was like a discotheque for some of the 70s. And then it got back under local management, I think 79, and it became Sam's. And then they changed the name to First Avenue, I think 1980, 1981. Again, I should know this stuff better. There's an amazing documentary on TPT, the PBS station in Minneapolis, that is like, just mind-boggling how much has happened in the club. But yeah, so my dad was best friends with the owner, and he was a CPA, so he like kind of watched over the books. And then he he put together an investment group that bought the property in 2000 and started getting more involved in the operations of the club. And then in 2004, the club went into bankruptcy. And my dad, as the landlord, was able to purchase the assets out of bankruptcy. And so it was closed for 18 days. And then my dad started operating it with Jack and Steve and Nate and Sonia at the helm in late 2004.
Yeah. Well, what I love is that you had your life and you left and you went to college. You started working in non-scripted television at VH1, and you came back, and your father was sick, and he luckily, thankfully, recovered. But you had this moment where it seemed like an epiphany. What was that epiphany?
Yeah, so my dad got sick in 2009, and I had just come off basically working full time on the Obama campaign and Prop 8 in California. And, I hadn't been really back to Minneapolis much between 2000 and 2008. And stepping back into the club, it's, nothing is like the place where you first discover music and feel all the emotions and everything. I mean, I like to say, I had almost all of my formative experiences in the main room. I had my first date. I threw up in public for the first time. I kissed my first boy and I kissed my first girl. And it's every important moment you can kind of tie back. And so it was just this wash of memories and this realization that oh, well, I would do anything to make sure the next generation gets to have this space, to have those types of experiences in a way that's safe and responsible and accountable. And so that's what I changed my life over to.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, your passion for it is so important. And I think so many people have that. And it's great to have somebody like yourself leading this part of the business, having a club like this, but then also on the political side. And I know, real quick before we get to questions, your father was a huge impact. You said he was your mentor. And I love that you didn't know what EBITDA, which I can't pronounce for the life of me, or P&Ls or any of that. And then now you've taken that and expanded the business exponentially. How did you just come in? What was that learning curve like, and that process to, from then till now?
Yeah, I feel really lucky that I got to spend so much time with my dad and get to know him as an adult, and I got to ask him all the stupid questions I never would have asked a teacher or an unrelated boss, right? Because you wouldn't wanted to look, show weakness or look like you didn't know things, but I just could ask him anything. And he was really patient and taught me, and I still quote him. I mean, probably 5 times a day, I find myself quoting him. So yeah. Again, it was really special. And again, there's the worst part of this coronavirus is I want my kids to be able to give him a hug, and you want to go to a concert, and hopefully this vaccine will come very quickly.
Yeah. All right, so here we got a bunch of questions now. Has Neva received support from other sectors of the industry, artists, labels, streaming services, et cetera? The shutdown really touches all facets of the business.
The support has been overwhelming. I mean, I think as independents, we're not used to asking for support. We're used to we do our thing. We're pretty insulated or insular, and just let us work. But it's just been incredible, the amount of people who have really stepped up and recognized that our clubs are where artists really, where they discover their fans, where they discover their voice, where they connect with their community, where they learn and grow and become the performers that end up being the biggest musicians and rock stars in the world. I read something our cultural exports are one of America's biggest exports, actually, and our clubs are where that really starts to happen. And so there was an industry letter that supported this amazing bill called the Restart Bill from Senators Bennett and Young, that is really a savior for our industry. So there was a number of industries that are industry companies like Amazon Music and Spotify led the letter, YouTube, ASCAP, BMI, eTix, C-Tickets, I'm forgetting a whole bunch, Light, and it just, again, like, we've never had to sell our industry or the clubs or the independents, especially, is especially vulnerable. And so to see the support has been really, really meaningful.
I mean, that stat that you put out, I think I heard it from Audrey or Jamie Loeb too, about $12 for every $1 spent at a venue, $12 is spent outside of the economy. So are there other outside of the music business industries that are supporting you? There may be, hotels, or, I mean, it's so important that these get going so that the burger joint next door gets some revenue,
Yeah,
or the taxi services, or the parking and everything else.
totally. A lot of in local municipalities got letters of support from visitors bureaus, from local chambers of commerce, from hospitality. There was one venue that had a meeting with their rep, and they brought to that meeting like the owner of the steakhouse next door, the owner of it was a smaller town, the steakhouse next door, the hotel, and the business district leader, all of whom were supporting NEVA and this venue, because we are the ones that make downtowns happen.
Completely. Good. Here's another question. How important was your experience working with Prop 8 and on the Obama campaign to what you're doing now with NEVA?
It was pretty impactful. It was like, I think Obama, just that campaign really motivated, and, the idea of hope and of working towards something and change and meaningful change. And there was also something really, I don't know if people listening were part of it also, but like Obama getting elected the same day Prop 8 was passed was like just, motivating in and of itself. Like, there's all these big impactful missions in the world, and sitting at a day job, especially a day job you're not especially like passionate about, seems pretty insignificant.
All right, good. What would you say to someone who may not understand what these venues provide for the community?
I would say interesting, and let's see, like, I'm kind of assuming everyone who's reading Pollstar understands, so I'm trying to think like on a 101 level. The $1 that was done by Chicago Loop Alliance, so that was an impact study that was done in 2019, and it showed $1 spent at a small club resulted in $12 of economic activity. And so it was, knowing your ticket money isn't just, going to the ticket itself. It's also part of the greater ecosystem of the parking lots and the hotels and the restaurants and the insurance and the beer that we buy in the venues. I think Adam Harkey from Wichita says, like, he has customers from 50 states coming to Kansas for his shows. It's like, what other industry is bringing people from all over 50 states, 49 states to Kansas? And so, I think the impact is pretty well acknowledged by people we deal with. And so usually when we can say these stats and just our employment numbers are so much bigger than people think they are, the message seems to really resonate.
Unfortunately, you happen to be in the city that was the epicenter of, the protests and the tragic killing of George Floyd. Add to already a year of so much difficulties, and then that happens. And I know you're super involved in your community, and it's very important to you. And even one of your venues was damaged during the protests or the riots, and let's separate those two things. I just want to know, like, how it's been for you there, and how it's going even at this point, just a month and a half beyond. And, there's still protests and people are still reeling.
Well, there's still injustice. There has to be protests, right? As long as we have injustice, we need to speak up against it, and we need to work towards a more just, equitable society, for sure. It really has been quite the last few months. So, I think we at First Ave, like the rest of the world, saw that George Floyd. I didn't watch the video. It was too much. And you just think, like, how can this happen? Like, what, and how have we constructed our cities and our leaderships and our societies that could lead to something like this even being conceivable. And, you know, like I said, like the rest of the world was also thinking that and protesting against it. And I'm really hopeful that this moment will bring meaningful, systematic, structural change to our governments and to the way that, you know, I think it's starting to happen in the way that we think and react and act personally. And so hopefully that'll result in the way that our governments also think and behave and react.
You know, I love what you said about one of your venues was damaged, right? It was burned, correct?
It's totally, yeah, it's a pretty much a rebuild.
And can you just, and your reaction to that though, I thought was so kind of unbelievably uh, magnanimous or just really generous. Like, what was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible to, you know, I was the first person that walked in at 6:30 or something in the morning. And, you know, I just kind of did the rounds to see how the venues were. And you, all of a sudden, you know, you're driving up and the fire alarm is blaring and you walk in and you're like, it looked like a swimming pool, right? All of the sprinklers had gone off. And I mean, it just was like devastating. And then it's like, who do you call? Because there was just so much damage, you know? But I think, you know, it's important to contextualize it and to say like, it's a building and I love the Turf Club. It's like one of my most favorite places in the world. And we, you know, we bought it and renovated it in 2014. And like, you know, I was nailing in nails and sweeping floors and I'm very like emotionally invested in the physical structure. But at the same time, like a man's life was taken for no reason except his skin color. And people absolutely have to be in the streets. And we can't lose sight of what's going on in our world and the fact that we need to change it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love your attitude about that, and that's really what we need more of. So also First Avenue has some a community nonprofit, right? That well before this happened. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, they so it was started by a couple employees in 2006 after our stage manager I think he broke his back or injured his back in a bike accident. And so realizing that there was no place for, you know, there are places for musicians to get support, but there's really nowhere for crew and touring production to get support, started a nonprofit called the Twin Cities Music Community Trust. And we would have fundraisers and it would be, you know, it would be able to fund on a one-on-one basis or individual basis as people in our community got injured and didn't have medical care or didn't have any other resources. And so when, you know, reminder, like everything shut down on 2 hours notice, right? On March 13th. Like as of March 12th, we were still like, okay, well, if they do 1,000 cap, then we'll have 999 people. And we'll, you know, again, everything was changing so fast. And so in late 2019, the employees had decided they didn't want to operate the nonprofit anymore. And so they handed it over to me and Nate and Sonia at First Ave. And so we were going through a strategic planning process and, you know, determining how we wanted to use the 501c3 and the nonprofit to best serve our community. And so then when everything shut down, we realized like, oh, we can raise money and start helping people, like, you know, not on an individual basis, but like on a mass basis and help our community get through this. And so we were really fortunate. With the postponement announcement, we put the language of how to donate. And so all of that went out at the same time and we were able to raise, I think, almost $200,000, almost all from individuals. And we are distributing it in $500 grants to members of our community. A little over 50% have gone directly to artists, about 20% or so to touring production people, and then maybe 30% to, and not just First Avenue employees, but to First Avenue employees, Live Nation employees, other venue employees, all in Minneapolis, or Minnesota, actually.
So you mentioned these mysterious people, Nate and Sonia. Who are these people? Who is the team at First Avenue?
The best people in the world. The best, without a doubt, the best people in the world.
Nate Kranz. What do they do?
Nate Kranz is the general manager. Sonia Grover is the head talent buyer, head of talent, and in charge of booking and marketing and at First Ave.
And then who are some of the other ballers on your team that should get some shout out here?
Ashley Ryan, who is the marketing director, and Damon Barna, who's our head of security, and Mike Killeen, our CFO, is just, everyone is just, again, working.
And your team, you have, people don't leave, right? Like you can't get rid of these people as much as you try.
Never want to, no way.
I'm kidding.
Conrad, our stage manager, has celebrated his 30th anniversary, I believe. And so I think it's great that the bands can come and they see the same face, welcoming them. We have stagehands that have been, Ron Anderson, our, production tech, has been at First Ave for 30 odd years. We have a bartender, a few bartenders that celebrated 30, 35, 40. I mean, Roy Free is again, it's a really committed crew. Again, I think a lot of people understand and appreciate what First Avenue means, and it takes everybody to keep it running.
So, as all the stars back there, it's mind blowing. The Ramones and Fela and Peaches, and I got a little list. Iggy Pop, B.B. King, Ray Charles, Public Enemy, Sleater Kinney, of course the Replacements, Husker Du, Hank Williams. But the person we would be most remiss not to speak about, the most important human being in the world. They're talking about putting a statue in the state capitol instead of Christopher Columbus. A gentleman by the name of Prince, who is synonymous with the club. Can you talk a bit about that and tell us any Prince story you'd love to tell, because we can't get enough of him?
I mean, Prince just obviously Prince is everything. Has my favorite quote in the whole world, which is, I like Los Angeles, I just like Minneapolis a little bit better. He showed that you can make it big, you can stay in Minneapolis. He lived, he worked here until the day he died. And he just was this really kind of mysterious figure, but he would walk through the club and give nods. We would call it the purple alert. We'd get a call Prince is on his way down, get everything ready. And he'd get everything ready, and then half the time he would come and half the time he wouldn't. But he had amazing musical taste. He always wanted to see the most awesome bands, and was really known, if bands were in town, he'd bring them out to Paisley and they'd jam and record and hang out. And again, he was just super supportive of the local scene. He employed local people, he brought them on the road with him. Was really you can't find somebody in Minneapolis without a Prince story or a Prince connection. And so I think he played 10, 11, 12 times at the club. Last time was 7707, and went until 3, 4 a.m. until the police finally came and shut it down.
Yeah. Were you might have been too young for the Purple Rain stuff, right? When they were filming at the club? I
was too young. Yeah, they shut the club down, I think, for 6 weeks in November 83.
84, 83 probably they filmed it. I think it came out 84, right?
Yes, they filmed it 83. And they shut it down completely.
Oh my God. I mean, I've talked to, everybody has a Prince story, even outside of Minneapolis. And it's always he appears magically and then he disappears and nobody knows where he went. And it's he's almost just the shadow knows. You can't ever really find Prince. And then, he plays unbelievable songs and then again disappears and then comes back. And then, did he ever do that? Did you ever see him make a cameo there or just show up on stage, or was there anything like that?
Yeah, no, definitely. He would show up the story, I think the best is the Gangs show in 2010, I want to say, where he showed up with his guitar. He was standing next to the stage and then walked away without ever getting on stage. I think the band say oh, we were doing such a good job. He was I didn't need to come up. So you never know. But he would call occasionally and hold 5 nights. I want to play, and then sometimes he would play, sometimes he wouldn't. But obviously we would do whatever we could for him.
Did you ever go to Paisley Park?
I did.
Yeah. any of those parties there? Did you ever see him play there or any other performances?
No, last time I saw him play was probably at the Dakota, which is the coolest 300 cap jazz club in Minneapolis. And you know, right up next to the stage, like literally like this. So that was beyond. But yeah.
Good. Well,
Uh,
thank you so much for all your time here. Before we go, though, you know, the most important thing right now is these bills before Congress and what NEVA's doing. How can we support? Like, what can we do? Should we call our congressman right now, or should we go to the NEVA site, or what's the best thing we can do?
SaveOurStages.com. It's a super easy. It'll take 30 seconds. You enter your address, and it'll send a message directly to reps. Send the message, post on your socials, make sure everyone you know is aware that this is, you know, this is D-Day, this is the last, you know, that these couple weeks could not be more important. And if you love independent venues and you love your local club, now is the time you need to come out and show it.
Right on. Everybody do that now. Save our stages. It's super important. Dayna, Frank, thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure. I'm so glad you're on our Impact 50 cover for Pollstar. It's really just wonderful. So thank you for your time. And stay in touch, please.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish it were for any other reason, but very, very happy to be here.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.